Trumplicans fail to own that their fealty was wrong, that they reject these groups, that these people are not patriots. Every day they fail to do that, the threat grows. Do these Trumplicans not understand that extreme right groups who are on terror watch lists in this country have been turbocharged? And that the lies they are telling will literally kill like they just did, and it will happen again. Just announcing the violence of the coup, that's not going to make it stop. You released the Kraken on this country, and then you ran because you knew what you were doing all along was wrong. And it wasn't just about the coup. If you were acting in good faith, Senators Rubio and Cruz, Hawley, Mr. McCarthy in the House, why didn't you stay and greet your MAGA mates? You told them to come. You said the election was rigged or said nothing. You said the left was trying to steal the country. America would be forever changed. Socialism, communism, every ism that's scary. Why now try to make it just like another controversy? These are not desperate people that we saw, just becoming what they oppose in a fit. They are evil, zealots, armed, prepared with Molotov cocktails, handcuffs. And they came to do what you said was righteous. They came hunting for U.S. lawmakers, chanting, "Hang Mike Pence." Thank you, Mr. President. Everyone knows what happened and why. 5 are dead, including a Capitol police officer. But the Trumplicans want to say, you know what the problem is? It's Biden. He's no uniter. Can you believe the unmitigated gall? Now you want to talk about who's not a uniter? At the worst time when we need you to finally do what's right, you're still going to do what's wrong. You just fomented an overrun of the Capitol. Have you no shame? For the safety of your own families, can't you just stop making it worse? Stop playing this as another left-right squabble. You really may start a civil war. It is up to the rest of us to stop this now. How? How? Let's brainstorm. We have the House Majority Whip, Democrat James Clyburn. Thank you, sir. Thank you for joining us during these dangerous days.
Well, thank you very much for having me, Chris, and thank you for your comments. I think they were right on. We are at an inflection point in the country, and I would hope that sane heads will prevail. You know, I've been around this stuff for a long, long time. Back in the 60s, we had these kinds of divisions in the country, but people got beyond parties. They came together, religious groups, other kind of civic groups, and political groups. I've been telling people recently that I'm blessed with 3 wonderful daughters. But if I ever had a son, his name would have been James Everett, in honor of J. Everett Dirksen, simply because back when we were trying to get the Voting Rights Act and the Civil Rights Act back in '64 and '65, I was so enamored with Dirksen until I said that if I ever had a son, I would name him after him. And that's the kind of thing that we have to really think about this country. That's what happened when Richard Nixon went awry. It wasn't the Democrats that sat down with Nixon and said it's time for you to go. It was the Republicans that went to him. And so I would hope that we would take the steps necessary today to really appeal to the right-thinking people in this country to come together as a country and continue our pursuit. I call it the great pursuit of liberty, justice for all. So that's what this thing is all about. And I would hope we would get some help from the other side to putting this country back on track.
Do you see any sign of that help? You're certainly not going to get it on impeachment. McConnell already said he wouldn't put it up until after the inauguration. So you only have a couple of weeks left. Do you have any signs of cooperation?
Well, there are some signs of cooperation, maybe not on the Senate side, but as you know, we don't have to start a trial at the time of impeachment. An impeachment is simply an indictment. And then you make decisions collectively as to when to bring this thing to trial. And so I don't believe that you got to rush to a trial simply because you do the impeachment. So I would hope that we will vote Wednesday to impeach simply because I think it's necessary for us to say to anybody who would ever wish to be president again, this is not okay. When you do this, there is going to be a price to pay. And I don't know anybody who relish going around being indicted, and which this is what this is all about. So
I understand. I understand the rationale. To be honest, at first I was like, well, it's not going to resolve the way they want again, so why do it? But I understand the precedential value. What do you say to a Senator Rubio who says, this makes Clyburn and the Democrats the problem? Now you're the problem by doing this. We need to come together, and you're doing this. What do you say to him?
Well, you know, people said that John Lewis was a problem when he was seeking justice. And now we said John Lewis was a saint. You have to do what's in the best interest of the country. You have to do what you know to be right. You know, I used to run a state agency, and I remember one time I was talking to a guy about having made a finding against him. He said to me, we know when we are wrong. And I think that these people know that they are wrong. The question is whether or not they admit that they're wrong. This was as clean of an election as ever been in my lifetime. And we know that this president-elect won by over 7 million votes. That, to me, in any other country would be a landslide. And a lot of us on my side are trying to reach out. I just proposed legislation the other day to lift every voice and sing a national hymn.
Right.
That, to me, would be a unifying effort on our part. I would hope to get bipartisan support for that.
Great idea.
Because I think it's time for us to sit down and do the things that are necessary to bring us together. And that's something that would bring us together.
One more quick question for you. How concerned are you on the security side? Congressman Cicilline and the ugly threats left as voicemails for him that people are coming to get him. They're more obvious. They're more ominous. The idea that maybe you had some within the ranks of the security forces that didn't behave right out of some type of affinity to the people who were coming. How worried are you about these two issues?
I'm very worried about that because I've been in this business a long time. I used to run the agency here in South Carolina that dealt with those kinds of issues. When I left state government, for the last 5 years that I was in state government, I had a full-time law enforcement agency assigned to me. They used to stay in my home when I was not here with my family. So I know what this is all about. So I'm very concerned about it. But I also know that it is the atmosphere that's created that determine whether or not these people are successful with their efforts. And that's why we're trying to get people in Washington to sit down and create a climate that allows us to solve our problems as a team, as a group of citizens, and not continue to try to make headlines the next day. I am interested in making headway, not headlines.
Congressman Jim Clyburn, God bless and thank you.
Thank you very much for having me.
You know, we do have to change the definitions here. We have to change the metrics, the measurements for success. It's not about who wins, it's about what survives now. Because Trump did everything with an acting this, acting that, because he couldn't get anybody through his own Senate process. We now don't have a head of Homeland Security. So who is keeping us safe right now as the FBI is ramping up for what may be new domestic bloodshed? We're going to take that to a counterterrorism expert. Phil Mudd is back on the show and talk to Michael Smerconish about what Republicans need to do to redeem themselves and what's being done to Republicans Are things being made worse or better? Next.
I can't express how excited we are.
As sports fans and stars around the world set their sights on Japan, these hometown heroes are already inspiring millions.
Whenever I go back to Japan, people tell me they started skateboarding by watching me ride.
Just want to make sure I represent my sport, I want to represent myself, and I want to represent my country.
Join me, Coy Wire, and meet some of the country's foremost competitors as they share their stories of strength and ambition.
Local Hero, Sunday on CNN.
Having 1.5 billion students working from home online has had a huge impact on trafficking. Youth Underground is a Swiss-based organization where we actually have our headquarters here in Geneva, Switzerland, but we work all over the world. One of the main tools we used was Instagram, because Instagram is very popular with the youth. We had these like live chats and conversations where we would have a young person, late teens or early 20s, interviewing or having a dialogue with a survivor of human trafficking. And this showed that the youth could carry their own. They could carry a conversation. They asked questions that were on point. If a survivor would respond in a certain way, they would try and empathize and put themselves in that situation. In terms of Youth Underground and education, it couldn't be better than that. It's not a classroom setting, but it's a conversation that needs to be had. So that's been extremely educational for us, and it's been a wonderful way to move forward through the pandemic.
Panerai watches have probably the strongest aesthetic code in the watch world, and for that reason, you simply cannot miss one on the wrist. There are so many ways that they catch your eye. Is it the oversized crown guard? Is it the overall shape of the case? All of these things, while being very aesthetically pleasing and very noticeable, are in fact very functional too, and speak to the Luminor's purpose first as a dive watch to navigate, and using, at the time, cutting-edge luminosity to be able to see the numerals and the indices underwater. Now, the story goes that the Luminor was spotted in a boutique in Florence by none other than Sylvester Stallone. He was looking for a watch to wear in his new movie Daylight. He chose the Luminor, and the rest really is history, because the Luminor has gone on to have this star-spangled Hollywood career, featuring in so many movies on so many famous wrists.
Connect the world with Becky Anderson.
It all starts here. Changing, fighting, creating, connecting. Real news that shapes our world. Getting perspective on this region from this region. Places that many of us know, but few of us get to see. It all starts here. And that's why we're here, bringing you the world from our Middle Eastern hub.
Connect the world with Becky Anderson, tonight on CNN.
Look, left and right, be reasonable. We need all hands on deck. This is not just politics anymore. And Trumpers are running off the ship like rats. We just lost the Homeland Security chief. This comes at a time that the FBI issues one of its most dire nation security bulletins yet. Trump insurrection across all 50 state capitals and Washington, D.C. Our safety is in the hands of people almost exclusively acting in acting capacities. Who's going to keep us safe? What political and practical moves are necessary? Phil Mudd and Michael Smirkanis join us now. Good evening, gentlemen. Phil.
Good evening.
Give us a sense of how you see the nature and degree of the threat.
Look, I look at this as a cancer. If you have a central node for cancer, you can attack it. You can attack those cells. The problem if you're in the government right now is you've got an FBI warning that says there are potential threats in 50 states. You cannot, Chris, you cannot coordinate security for 50 states simultaneously on one day. You have to assume that all those local police and sheriffs are coordinated, maybe with National Guard assistance, maybe with their state governments in support or not. You can't do that. The second thing I'd say is to refer back to what you said about a bunch of acting people. In a real world, you're going to have an operations center coordinated by the White House. That is, the White House is sitting on live, secure video feeds with agencies like Homeland Security, like the FBI, saying, what are we seeing minute by minute, who's doing what, and if there's a problem, you've got the players at the table who can pull the triggers, and also, this is really important, who have the experience to pull the triggers and say, this is what we're going to do in California and New York. You can't do that many places at once, Chris, and you don't have the people in place who are being coordinated by the White House simultaneously. How worried are you about this? And how worried are you about the people that we saw leading people into the Capitol? I'm worried as both an American and a practitioner. Let me give you the easy part, the practitioner. That's just multiplication tables. Assuming that nothing goes south in 50 states simultaneously, that is, you can assume that people don't show up with multiple AR-15s, that there's not a hostage event, that no security is breached by it like it was at the Capitol. But Chris, that's a multiplication table. I would not assume that that would happen in 50 states simultaneously. As an American, I'll give you a different perspective. Look, on 9/11, I was evacuated from the White House. It was them attacking us. That is, people who didn't look like us. How do we harden cockpit doors for people coming into this country? How do we look at visa processes to ensure that we don't have dirty people come into this country? How do we have no-fly lists? Right now, I can't do that. There's 80 million people on the president's Twitter list. The people coming over the transom at the Capitol or in Idaho or California or Florida are me. They are us. I can't defend that, Chris. They're not them, they're us. Michael, the political fix. The Democrats are going to make a move on impeachment. They say it has precedential value, that they have to do it, even if the process isn't complete. But what do you see as incumbent upon Republicans to be doing right now that they're not?
I had a telephone call today on Sirius XM, Chris, where we both enjoy a home on the POTUS channel. I think his name was Anthony in San Francisco, and he said to me something I hadn't thought of. It should be the Republicans who are pushing for impeachment because they'll bear the burden. Donald Trump will dominate the party through to 2024 unless they take him out of the mix. And taking him out of the mix right now would mean that he's impeached in the House and convicted in the Senate. I don't expect that to happen, but I thought it was a really good observation. There's this triumvirate that needs to be dislodged. It's conservative media, the hold that they have on the base, and then the ability to primary incumbents who are scared to death and kowtow to all that they want. And I think that the big story today was Cumulus, this owner of more than 400 talk radio stations across the country, essentially saying to their conservative hosts, if you lie about the state of the election, if you continue the fiction that it's not over, we will fire you. And I don't remember that kind of an edict in the last 20, 30 years. I think it was very necessary and very healthy. I don't want them to squelch opinion, but these are facts that we're talking about. That's what needs to happen.
Blurry line, though, Michael.
Say it again, Chris.
Blurry line, opinion and fact about what you think is right and wrong.
Chris, I think I have a standard for that. It's the defamation standard. You know, hyperbole is not actionable, but you make an assertion of fact that's capable of being proven true or false. That's actionable. And I think the same standard should apply here. If people want to go on and criticize the two of us or even fill mud with hyperbole, that's one thing. But if they want to outright lie about our positions or what's going on in the Congress, that's quite something else. I think it's a healthy step. I think it's a step in the right direction. A final thought I'll say is this. Donald Trump, to me, and I blame him, I want to be very clear about that, I blame him for lighting the fuse last Wednesday. But this didn't begin with his speech, and frankly, it didn't begin with his election. It's been 30 years in the making, largely stirred by individuals with a profit motive to keep you listening to radio shows, television programs, and internet clicks.
Michael Smerconish, thank you very much. I'll give Phil Mudd his own last word out of my mouth. When Trump was first starting during the campaign and he was playing with extremist groups and rhetoric that plays to them and they were coming out in favor, Phil Mudd told me these are not people to play around with. If they find a way into the legitimate game, we will regret it. And now, here we are. Phil, thank you. Smirk, thank you. Now, you've all seen this startling image. The man making off with Speaker Pelosi's lectern. Look at the big smile. Yay! Not no more. Not free for long. Not smiling for long. Tonight, his legal team is here. What is the defense? What does this man mean? Why did he do this? And we have loads of tips that are helping the FBI net dozens of these rioters. And boy, the work is ongoing, and you won't believe what they're finding. The key intel from the insurrection. Next.
This is the 100 Club, our look at companies that are 100 years old or older.
For relaxing times, make it Suntory time.
Hollywood movie Lost in Translation puts Suntory whiskey in the spotlight on a global stage for many. Its story began over a century earlier when Japanese merchant Shinjiro Torii started to develop Western-style liquors for a Japanese market.
In 1899, my great-grandfather founded the company in Osaka.
In 1923, Shinjiro Torii built Japan's first whiskey distillery in Yamazaki. A few years and much experimentation later, Suntory's Kakubin whiskey was born.
The first Rolex Series event brings us to Abu Dhabi Golf Club. A title that every European tour professional would simply love to have on their resume. He wins the Abu Dhabi HSBC Championship.
A mask can say a lot about the person who wears it, but even more about the person who doesn't.
I'm Melissa Bell in Paris, and this is CNN.